Hey there, good people, and welcome to another episode of The Finnovator with me, Stuart Bell. In this week's episode, I've got another module I want to share with you. Again, taken from the program, and this one comes from a few years ago. To give you the background to this, at the time, I was working with a number of practices who were experimenting with the idea of offering cash flow coaching or financial coaching as a bit of a loss leader, a bit of a way of getting engagement from certain people who might otherwise not engage with advice at this point in time. And the problem I found is that as an offering, there were a couple of things that really stopped it from working. One is the price point. Having done a lot of pricing on this, generally, whenever I looked at someone's offering and saw a price point under $600 a month, I realized that it was likely not making a level of profit that it needed to, if a profit at all. And just to be clear, that really works for certain markets like high-earning doctors or barristers or lawyers where they are earning a great deal of money, but they're not necessarily managing it that well. But for a lot of people, the idea of spending $600 a month in order to get cash flow coaching, there was a kind of balancing act there which often didn't make sense in terms of spending money in order to create a surplus which was being spent on the cash flow coaching. But the second part to it was really about the way it was being delivered. Having been a coach for over 2 decades, I have got a lot of insight into coaching models when they work and coaching models when they don't, on both ends. The scalable coaching models that really don't deliver value to the coachees, all the way down to coaching models which really have coaches sitting there rote teaching things over and over again, which is not in anybody's best interest. And so this module is really unpacking it. It's called Teflon Financial Coaching because it was really about presenting some of the challenges that practices often face, including the pricing one, and then suggesting ways that they could change their approach or modify certain things they're doing in order to make it a little less sticky and to make sure that they weren't coming out of every meeting with a whole bunch of action items and a whole bunch of expectations being set with clients that make it really difficult to deliver. So if you have used coaching in the past or you've offered it, alternatively, you are looking at how you can make a coaching offer, I hope this is useful. And if it is, please just take a moment to leave a review, or ideally a 5-star one, just to let people know what you think of this episode and what you think of the podcast and all. That's it for me. I'm going to step aside and I'm going to jump in and let you listen to Teflon Financial Coaching. Enjoy. What I really want to do today is unpack the coaching model behind it and hopefully give you some insight into what to avoid in terms of getting the coaching engagement wrong, and also what to put in place to make it really work better for you. But there is kind of a big idea I wanted to sort of share to begin with. And I think it's this, that coaching has become, I don't know whether it's just me, but it feels like it's become a bit of a new title, a catchword. And as I mentioned, which that's all very good, but one of the problems is there is a big difference between as I said, between advising and coaching and all in between. So if you just kind of get the name, I'm a financial coach, that's cool. But if you want to get the actual model in behind it, it requires some slight changes to the way that you approach working with clients, the way that you approach your view on who does the work, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to draw from not just my experience of working with people who do this really well, but also there's some really great people, particularly in the US, who are doing this really well. For example, like the Financial Mental Group. I suggest, by the way, check out some of these sites. They've got a very, very clear focus, probably more so than any site I've seen, on the fact that they are financial coaches. I'm also going to draw from people like Phil Garrett, who he recently published a great post. I think it's a few months ago, or a while ago now, but about what it takes to be a financial coach. And he went really, really deep on the differences, how to make it work, the models, the accountabilities, the pricing. And I think if you're looking for an article out there that sort of articulates the fundamental differences in the way that it's marketed, delivered, the balance of engagement between clients, that he's a really good person to look at. As well as a business that I got an opportunity to meet when I went to San Francisco, Levanto, who are very much in that space of working with people as a household CFO, working with what we call Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. In other words, people who make good money but don't have assets. And there's been a lot of work that's already been done on trying to sort of tailor the proposition to understand how it's different and what the needs are. And that's essentially what I want to deal with today. So as mentioned, I'd love for you to let me know. Pop it in the box because I really want to make sure we cover off what's relevant to you. What appeals to you in particular about this financial coaching proposition? Pop in the box. I really want to know, what is it that's brought you here today? What is it that is in particularly interesting for you when it comes to financial coaching as a proposition for your business? Let me know. I'd really like to understand. Sabina, in particular, I'd love to know what appeals to you. Ruben, same deal. Kelly says, I want to incorporate this in our business and know how to charge for it, but it's not something we've ever been paid for. Perfect. Okay. That's good to know. So it sounds to me, Kelly, like you've done it in the past in some way, shape, or form, but haven't necessarily, turned it into a revenue center for yourself. Ruben says he wants to expand the service proposition to existing clients, open up new markets, and add a lot of value to clients. Perfect. Definitely will open up markets. Sabina, it's like you mentioned how to scale and deliver. Probably perfect. I think a lot of you are probably doing this already. Jared, engaging better with clients. James, add on to advisory and funnel for advice clients. Perfect, James. That's music in my ears. And Nobby, apart from having developed the software to show people how to eliminate debt, seeing the difference it can make is well worthwhile. Absolutely, Nobby. And I know you've got a lot of experience in this space. It does make a big difference, but one of the things we don't want that difference to be made at the cost of you not getting appropriately rewarded for it, or just working 8-hour weeks to deliver it. Elizabeth, as per Kelly, it's a hidden expectation in all interactions. Good stuff. Okay. That's very useful. And that gives me some context as to where people are at and also what they're looking for. So one final question. What's your biggest question that you have about nailing financial coaching? Whether it's about the proposition, whether it's about the service delivery model, whether it's about the conversation, what's the one thing that you'd love to be able to get answered, or at least make progress on here today? Glenn, do me a favor, pop over to the chat box so I can centralize everything. Glenn says, I think in some respects we are financial coaches, coaching them on current finances, but looking to see if this will add to the proposition or improve what we do for clients. Love it. Service delivery model, says Elizabeth. Perfect. I can certainly help you with that. James, how to scale it and price it. Perfect. Sabina, the conversation and the delivery. Love it. Okay. We can certainly help with that. Kelly, how to offer it as a proposition. We offer scaling and pricing. Awesome. This is good. Scaling, pricing, service delivery model, conversation. These are all coming up. So let's dive into this, shall we? And as I said, keep the questions coming, keep the sharing, because I know there's a lot of experience in this room, and I'd love to be able to pull from things as we go. Okay, so let's talk about coaching, and let's talk about what happens when you add it as a proposition, but the model on the back end isn't necessarily complete, or somewhere along the line expectations aren't managed. What I see a lot of businesses do, and to different degrees, is they kind of sell clients on the value. I will help you make smart decisions. I will work with you to enable you to map things out, to get clear on what you want, to get a system in place. In other words, they're good at selling the value. They're good at selling the conversation that you have a financial problem, you have a sticking point in your life, which is related to money, and I have specialist skills and expertise, which if we sat down and spent some time working together, I think I can change a bunch of stuff in your life that is going to enable you to move on to that next phase. The problem is, if you approach financial coaching the same way you approach advisory, which is, one of our propositions will do it for you, we'll make it happen. I'm here to serve you rather than coach you. What often happens is you end up loading up. I've experienced this in coaching. I've seen this in advisors. You end up loading up with action items. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this. And it ends up in a situation where you almost realize that you've almost not just coaching, you're almost like hand-holding and doing it for them. Nobby says coaching extends beyond teaching. It's therapy, which means an ongoing relationship rather than a quick fix. Absolutely. It's a lot to do with behavior as well. Like knowledge alone will only get you so far. It's applying that knowledge to change what you're actually doing. That's where you get the big results. Another problem I often see with businesses is they enter a coaching relationship. They have this great plan. They're going to do things. And then somewhere along the line, the client kind of gets the opinion that, you know what, I think we're done. Or I think I've got everything I need out of it. And they kind of drop off, which means particularly if you haven't got the pricing model right, you've just done a significant amount of work up front, possibly undercharging for it. And next thing you know, the client's going, thanks very much, and moving on, if that makes sense. I think if you don't correct this problem, one of the things I often see is people get caught in the chase, which is, they love doing the coaching, the proposition's there, they build it all, they get there in some way, shape, or form, but they find themselves, because they have this drop-off problem, or have this problem of trying to do so much, they end up either chasing the action items, chasing the clients to get stuff done, chasing them to, have the conversation, or worst case scenario, chasing new clients to bring on board and feed the model. The dog is a good analogy. Yeah, chasing your tail. Do you know how hard it is to find an image with a good dog chasing his tail, but I found one. In my view, if you can flip that round and you get the coaching relationship right, it becomes more about sharing the load. In other words, you're not there to kind of say, hey, let me take this stuff off you. Let me reconcile all those transactions. Let me set up the debt for you, and I'll track it, and I'll report to you. Instead, there's a bit of this is what you need to do, and there's a little bit that I need to do. But partly the role here is I'm not accountable to do this for you. I'm accountable for making sure that it happens. If you understand the slight difference in there. Now, best coaching is when you inspire people to get excited, particularly with money, something they're not naturally, people don't naturally get excited about, budgeting or that sort of stuff. But if you can inspire them to take action and take action now, even if it's just small steps which build momentum, that means they're coming back to you and you've got them started. And I think the third thing that is really important is you put the focus on the system. It's not you delivering the action items. It's not you having to get the client to follow it. It's getting agreement from the client that if we collectively work together and you follow the system I'm putting in front of you and you do X, Y, and Z one after another, then we're going to be able to get you the result. But if you deviate from that, if you drop things, that's where the system isn't going to work. That makes sense. And I think the big aspiration at the end of any coaching relationship is if you can get clients to a point where they're coming into a situation, maybe they're jaded, maybe they feel like it's too hard. Maybe they feel like they don't understand it, procrastinate it. If you can inspire them to realize that, holy moly, I can do this. I can take the steps. I can get things in place. Then the end result is you end up inspiring them to take the first step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And as you would know, Einstein, compounding, eighth wonder of the universe, if you can get people started earlier and get them invested in it and excited about it and realize that it is just about taking steps to follow a process and sticking to it, then guess what? You can help them achieve massive outcomes at the end of it all. And hopefully if you retain them long-term, you end up with not just clients over time, but you end up with advocates. So what I want to do today as part of this session is I really want to unpack that coaching part of the equation. You know, how to avoid the first part, which involves you doing a bunch of stuff and clients kind of dropping after a period of time, and get the second bit, which is inspire them. They do the heavy lifting. You get the balance right. So before I go, I really want to also ask this question and understand this. From your perspective, do you see financial coaching as the core of your offer? In other words, you are a financial coach predominantly, or do you see it as part of your offer? I think for a couple of you, I know the answer to this. James in particular, I'm getting a sense that you see this as a part of your funnel. Yeah. James is part of the offer. Totally. Yeah, got that sense. So that's good. Part Kelly, lovely. Part of the offer from Ruben, good stuff. Okay. So most of the people here, not sure yet, says Jared. Cool. Well, hopefully by the end of it, coaching isn't for me, but it forms part of the service deliverability. Interesting. Again, I'm going to read between the lines saying, Robbie, Nobby, that you see yourself as building the system and then working with other people who can deliver it, which is ultimately, I think what most coaches want to build a system that enables other people to step in and do it as well. Cool. All right. That's very, very useful. Glenn says, part of the offer, I believe clients need to take responsibilities for action. They are adults and they do need to take some responsibility. Couldn't agree with you more, Glenn. I may have mentioned this to you, Glenn, and I know you would connect with this, but Glenn and I are both involved in a boot camp. I go down to Coogee Beach and Glenn just nails it from afar. But the two people who coach us both, Chief and Gunny Brabham, are phenomenal trainers, really know their stuff. And I was talking to them about the coaching business model. They run a sort of a scaled coaching model where they have 60 people on a beach. And he explained it to me really, really simple. He's like, here's the thing, and here's the way he thinks of it. He can run the event. He can basically set up the boot camps. He can make people feel guilty for not turning up at 5:30 in the morning and doing the exercise. He can tell them how to eat and tell them what not to eat. He can share with them exercises. And he can even, create that reward system that gets them the people to come back. But as he says it, Glenn, I think you'd agree. He says, I can't do people's push-ups for you. And I think one of the big challenges that, particularly in a very noisy online world, is particularly, I think financial advice, when it's delivered as advice, it still remains hard to do it all for the client. Certainly, unless you're charging a premium fee, I think it's really difficult. But coaching, man, I totally agree with you. There's an element to that which people have got to meet you halfway. Otherwise, they just don't necessarily appreciate the true value of what you're doing. So let's attack this with 5 key principles. And then we're going to get stuck into some of the doing. And I'll show you some of the examples of how to scope out your offer and how to scope out the delivery piece. So the first bit for me is I think it's really important to understand the mode in which you're delivering. Let me just kind of put forward a view. Actually, let me ask you first. What do you think? What do you guys see as the fundamental differences between an advisor and a financial coach? Let's just do a bit of a brainstorm. What are the differences between a financial advisor and a coach in your mind? I'm going to make a little sort of, what do we call it? Parabola? No. So advisor sells, interesting, and a coach works with clients. Okay, Nobby, can you just expand on that? Sells what in particular? Don't not disagree with you. I just want to understand more clearly. Advisor sells and a coach works. So let's get that. So let's say we've got a coach here. I'm going to say we've got a consultant down here, a financial consultant. And over here, we've got an advisor. Nobby says advisor sells and a coach works with. Glenn says a focus on strategy for advisor, I'm guessing. And coach, a focus on cash flow. Beautiful. Sabina, advisors should do. I totally agree with that. Advisors tend to do. Whereas my experience, coaches tend to facilitate and plan, create plans and action plans. Ruben says, financial advisors use tech knowledge whilst coach delivers on personal habit change. Love that insight. You know, this is, advisors tend to be, you know, not across the board, but there's more of a technical, what's happened there? Technical strategic aspect, whereas coaches tend to be very behavioral. Still technical aspects in there, but yeah. Nobby, generally accepted financial advice leads to a product sale. It's an interesting point. Yeah. Not always. I think there are a lot of advisors out there who will make recommendations and put together a recommended plan and then, you know, will be relatively agnostic. But I agree, there tends to be some sort of vehicle in here, financial vehicle. And, you know, there doesn't necessarily have to be a financial vehicle or recommendation in there. So being a coach focused on cash flow and get them thinking about goals. Yep, totally agree with that. You know, goals, it's about systems, whereas financial advice tends to be more about the end game. Yeah, industry slowly changing to advice rather than direct product. Nobby, I agree with you. I think there are certain elements, the industry's moving at different paces. Like a lot of the people in this room on the program, I think are making that change very, very fast indeed, but I take your point. I think there's another piece as well, which is the consultant. Consultants tend to sort of tell, and they deal with information, and essentially they're there to kind of give information. But this is good. Yeah, I think there are some of the fundamental differences, which is, you know, coaches are about working with people. They're about focusing on cash flow and behavior, about facilitating an outcome, helping to create plans. They focus on behavioral. There doesn't have to be a vehicle at the end of it all, whereas advice tends to be, and this isn't critical, it's about an end game. It's about a strategy. It's about an outcome. It's about doing something. It's about the technical side of things. And usually, not always, there's a vehicle end of it. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Yeah. So what's really important is that when you're going at this from a coaching perspective, really understand that when you're in a financial coaching point of view, the focus is going to be different. It's very much going to be about helping the client unpack their thinking, understand why they've got to where they've got to with certain things, understand the challenges they've had along the way, the mistakes they've made, why they've made them, and all the behavioral stuff. And I think it's really important to approach that, because if you go into a coaching engagement with the view that, hey, I'm going to be in a financial advisor mode, I'm going to do it for you, I'm going to look for creating the outcome in a very short space of time, and by doing that, I'm going to, you know, seek to apply my technical knowledge, then potentially you're not going to take the client along on the journey with you. And I think that's a really key part to do, because the best coaching is when at the end of it, not just that there is an outcome achieved, but there has been a transfer of capability, knowledge, or behavioral change, if that makes sense. So first point is just get very clear, particularly for those who are going to who see this as part of their offer. Understand that when you're sitting in front of a client and you're coaching them, it's going to be very much of a different thing you're looking to do, as opposed to when you're in an advice space, which is very much about the strategic, the technical, the getting it done, the putting it in place, and the applying some of your information. The second thing that's really sort of relevant, coaching can't start with an open-ended proposition. It has to be focused on a very specific outcome. And what I mean by that, whenever I've seen businesses approach coaching, we'll be your financial coach. We'll help you do things which are sometimes intangible. The problem that occurs is that typically lends itself to a limited time frame. In other words, that people will kind of do a bit of coaching and they'll go, you know what, I think I'm there. I'm not really sure where we're going from next. I was here because I wanted to, you know, get clear on what I wanted. I was here because I wanted to get sorted. I feel like I'm kind of there. And so I'm done. So The key part here is I think it's important from the off that if you're going to offer coaching, your coaching relationship and your coaching engagement had a really clear scope. Let me give you an example. On screen, I think you've got a copy of this in your notes, but it's got two parts. It's the why. Why are we engaging with this coaching, and what are we going to work on? So I've given you an example. Some of the common coaching goals that you might have if you're sitting down and coaching clients financially would be they're coming to you because they want to pay off their home faster. That's a goal. Because they want to implement a cash flow management and have it work for them beyond. They want to plan for life beyond retirement. They want to get their debt under control, or they want to take charge of their finances following a major life change. For example, the death of a spouse who was taking care of the money previously, or alternatively, divorce. Those are two changes where there's been a significant amount of change, and the person may actually want to develop skills that they didn't have before. Kids are another one that comes across. A lot of people suddenly realize they've got to do adulting when they have kids. In terms of the potential program scope, for any of these situations, your scope of the program that you put in front of a client might be, okay, what we need to do, what I need to coach you is to build awareness of what your spending habits right now. In other words, help you discover how much money is coming in and going out and what's happening. Part of that scope may be to design an ideal lifestyle, where you want to live, how you want to live it, personal values, financial fears. Part of your coaching might be to unpack true financial behavior. So what's the actual personal beliefs and the patterns of behavior that have happened in the past, and how has that impacted them? Do they tend to stay away from risk for reasons that don't make sense? Do they tend to splurge on unexpected spending? Take another coaching piece, maybe to actually go, right, we need to fix something right now. We need to get debt under control. We need to change that or create a backup plan, or really get you guys so you understand what you need and don't need when it comes to protection. Saving habits. Create a cash flow management plan that actually works, not just one that, budget, forget it, move on. Help them with transitions we've spoken about, having kids, retiring, divorce, loss of a loved one, and potentially as part of that, providing support and follow-up. So as well as keeping them reporting to you during the engagement, and that's a really key choice of words. I want them to report to you and not the other way around. Offer the opportunity to maintain the relationship after the coaching sort of lapses, or potentially when it's not an intensive period. So as well as give them the chance to take the next step. And let's talk about this next step piece, because one of the common things I hear is after a period of time, clients drop off. And I think the best person who's sort of commented on this is a guy called Taki Moore, who I know Glenn knows all about. Taki and a few others will. And he had this great saying. He says, one of the things you have to understand is that clients will leave you when they run out of future. So at a point where the client feels that all of the things you've covered in your coaching relationship pretty much are over and done with, if they don't know there's a next step, if they don't know there's a next level, if they don't know there's a next phase, an advanced, level 2, level 3, that's where your massive risk, particularly in coaching, is dropping off. Particularly in coaching, whereas with advice, you may have a tie because there is a management of investments or there is a management of certain insurances. But in coaching, once they feel that all of the things they need to have learned has been learned, if you're not sort of painting a picture of what the next phase is for them, that's where your risk of drop off comes on. Does that make sense? So my big tip for this is, if you're going to go coaching, it's hugely important that you have kind of a next step. Now, those of you on the program will know this. You'll probably use it in your first appointments. But it's really about, this is the next step. For most, if you're approaching coaching, there are 4 levels to achieving financial freedom, right? Up there's the end game. The level before financial freedom is when you generate income that's not to do with work. And you can do this very quickly, or you can do this slowly over a period of time. In order to get the opportunity to generate that income, the level before is accumulate assets through the twists and turns of the economy, the legislation, and foundational piece that most coaches tend to focus on are these bits down here. Get the cash flow right so you don't keep drawing back on your assets, borrowing money. Get the debt under control. If you've been in a situation where credit cards are out of control, have a risk B, a plan B, and ideally, as early as possible, get the structure in place. Now, the point of this is, if you're coaching a client and you're putting in front of them saying, hey, you're here, and when we finish some of that stuff, which could take a period of time, our next phase to focus on, the next thing to coach you is that piece in the puzzle. And then, we'll coach there and there. You're painting a picture of the potential future, which, and this is really important as well, James, which then leads nicely into the next stage in your funnel. Because you're absolutely right. If we look at the classic financial advice funnel, here would be your free stuff. This would be something like your expert session or maybe your video course, whatever the thing might be, the cheap, inexpensive, high value thing. This might be your coaching relationship, and this might be your advice. In which case, DIY, a little bit of assistance, but scalable. This is your done with you, and then this is done for you at the end of it all. That makes sense. Cool. Everybody still with me? Is this useful so far? So make sure that we're hitting the mark. Yes, perfect. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Rubes. Okay, let's move on. Because I think the third piece to make is, I think, one of the best quotes about coaching. And man, I've read so many books about coaching, how to make it work. There's some great books out there. Is this idea that coaching is about two things. It's about managing energy. First, you have to manage your energy. And second, you have to manage your client's energy. And obviously, when you sit down with clients and you identify all the problems and you create a plan, that point motivation's super high. Most people are very motivated at the beginning. It's what comes later that matters, right? Now, the problem with getting the behavioral stuff wrong is if you take on the responsibility as an advisor, as a coach for, influence the behavior, it can be exhausting. What ends up happening is you end up kind of taking on board things during the lulls, particularly if you've got cash flow management offerings there. I think one of the biggest problems that often I see with cash flow offerings is advisors kind of see it as their responsibility to generate the reports and tell clients what their spending is. And I think that's really dangerous. It's dangerous because it's a heck of a lot of work, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But secondly, the moment some element of that reporting is off, it casts doubt on the whole thing. And I've had experience of this working with an advisor years ago, my advisor, when the data just wasn't right, the spending wasn't great, the categories weren't on the money, and it put a whole doubt about it. So what we have to do is, my suggestion is turn it around. And we want to make it so the client is responsible for managing some of the heavy lifting. Yeah, it totally does. And that's the problem. Personal responsibility. You cannot, I think it's Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, says the paradox of value is things that are acquired without any struggle or toil will never be valued. And this is the thing. If you are trying to change their behavior, coach them, and they are not invested because they have to do some of the heavy lifting, or they have to pay a significant fee that they know represents a significant investment for them, then the likelihood of them actually getting involved in it changes. So I want to give you a really quick framework. There's a great book by Marcus Bird, who I've had the opportunity to spend time with and talk to, called The 15-Minute Coach. Actually, no, it's called The 5-Minute Coach, but I think your 15-minute one is probably a bit better. And this is about putting in place a framework that, as a coach, enables you to have that quick check-in with clients. I see a lot of advisors, particularly advisors who, that idea of phoning up clients and having a little chat, it's kind of like, well, what are we going to talk about? I haven't really done anything. I don't have anything handy. And in other words, it's very much about doing stuff or delivering stuff. And I suggest that sometimes these check-in calls, if you structure them the right way, particularly in coaching, can actually be one of the best things you do. And they can be done in a very short space of time. Michael and Jason, you'll be listening to this later, but I know you guys recently did a phone around with a bunch of your clients. You wanted to understand whether your perception of certain aspects of your service model was congruent with the truth. And we applied to some degree this kind of structure. And what the end result was is, firstly, you found out a bunch of information about where clients were and weren't. But most importantly, you got an energy. You got an energy projecting forward. So one of the key bits is, in the coaching relationship, you don't want to get caught in what I call a negative feedback loop. A negative feedback loop is that conversation that you may have had with a coach, which is, hey, Jared, James, did you do your homework from last month? James and Jared go, no, I kind of got busy. Okay. Well, you do it this month, right? Yeah, I'll do it this month. Okay, I'll speak to you next month. Next month comes, hey, Jared, James, did you do your homework? No, I didn't. I got busy. Okay, well, do this. It doesn't work. It ends up with a situation where Jared and James don't want to talk to me as their coach, because every time they do, I remind them of the fact they didn't do it. And the longer it goes on, the worse it is. So we want to create a forward focus, because when we focus on the future, we focus on what's going to happen next, as well as the progress made, we fulfill a loop. So it works like this. There are 3 areas we want to talk about. Yes, let's talk about that. The first thing is we want to talk about wins and progress. We want to focus on past positive. What's happened in the last month or 2 months or 3 months that's been good. We also want to talk about learnings and challenges, past introspective, because it's not all rainbows and unicorns unless you're a 4-year-old girl. We want to say, what hasn't gone so right? What hasn't gone well? And the final thing is we want to talk about, what are we working on next? In other words, the next month, what's the one or two, maximum three things that you want to be telling me have gone well now, which is about future action orientated. If you don't get this sort of the win thing right, what ends up is you kind of get in a what's next situation. Some of the most type A personalities are so focused on what's next. They never actually take some time to recognize progress. And if you're in that situation, it can be exhausting as a coach because you're doing all this great stuff. And when you take a moment to look back, you go, wow, we've actually come a long way, but you never get them to recognize it. So it's always about a place you never quite get to. If you do this right, the end result is you celebrate and you recognize progress as well as wins. And anybody who's done professional sport will tell you progress is just as important as what you've actually achieved. If you don't do the learnings and challenges thing, you get perfection. Constantly looking at, we're not quite there. Instead of viewing, you know what, I haven't done so well in the cash flow this month. Great. Specifically, what have you learned about the system or the way you work with it? In other words, giving people the opportunity to look back on their own behavior, but really quickly getting them to diagnose the problem. If you get it right, you get refinement. You get the constant iteration, which I reckon there's a few coaches on here will tell you that if you can get a client to just refine their behavior consistently over time, it's often more sustainable and generates better results than trying to change everything at once. The final bit is this future focused. If you don't get okay, what are you going to do next? What's the next month all about? What are you focused on? Are you focused on spending less money in this space? Are you focused on paying down this much debt? Are you focused on doing planning for your retirement in this way? Are you focused on learning about how to manage this part of it now that you're in charge of the money? You get them drifting away from coaching. And as a result, it gets looser and looser as time gets on. You get it right. Every conversation you have is a refinement. So the three questions you really need: find up a client. Hey Kelly, hope you're well. Hey, just want to have a quick check-in. Very quickly, what's been going well for you last month? Just give me a quick run through. What have been the wins? What have you made progress on with that plan we spoke about? And what have you made progress on your cash flow? That's fantastic. Nicely done. That's great. So what didn't go to plan? What hasn't worked so well? What do you need to focus on betting, or what have you learned in the last month? And great. So between now and the next time we have that conversation, what are you going to be focused on doing? What do we want to be talking about next time? Let me know what you're going to do next week, the week after, so we can have a celebrate on it. Does that make sense? Cool. Let me give you a couple more and then we'll dive into the doing. The fourth one is kind of really important to me, which is I want any coach who's out there to really lean on your system. As you can see from the slide in front of you, systems are what gets people's results. If people can follow systems, it's far better than expertise. In actual fact, I say that if you want to make a proposition that works particularly online, and if you want to make a proposition that's not going to be dependent on you, stop selling your expertise. Stop saying, I'm really good at doing this, or I'm an expert, or I've got lots of experience, and say, I have a system, which if you follow it according to the plan that we have in place, and we have the necessary focus and resources, will maximize your chance of getting a result. So straight off the bat, you can see up there, the Financial Mentor Group, they've got a system. Funnily enough, it looks like a pyramid. She's got 7 steps, the 7 stages to 7 figures. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, up there in the middle there, the EBIS. They've got a system for enabling people to really understand the path. Scott Pape, they are reliable, repeatable, and the other thing, Nobby, is systems is what will take your knowledge and turn it into IP that you can package and sell. Unfortunately, knowledge is like steam. You can see it, you can kind of feel it, but it's really hard to pick it up, put it in a box and take it back. We want to take that steam, condense it down to water, and then turn it into ice. And ice is what you can sell as courses, sessions, systems. Scott Pape's got one, and we've got one which I've shown you before. So if you're not thinking about your business if you're a coach and you're not articulating and talking about the system that you work with clients, this is probably one of the best things you can do off the bat. And finally, let's talk about the money. It is so important to get the pricing right on this one. I've seen so many businesses, they put together a great coaching offer, and they go, great, I'm going to start delivering it. And they price it at like, I don't know, $49 a month or $100 a month or whatever it. And when I'll come in and analyze it, you actually go, okay, what's actually going on? What's the FaceTime with the client? What's the work that's going in the background? How long are you spending, on their transactions? You realize that they are so far below profit margin. It is frightening. Now, if you are offering this as a loss leader, it's a part of your funnel. I totally understand that you might do that, but If this is a hugely valuable piece of work, which it is, and it's a piece of work that's going to take up your time, and if there's even a little bit of trend in your business that people are taking the coaching and then dropping off, then you're potentially setting yourself with a little time bomb in your business that isn't going to work. My experience has been most businesses that deliver coaching the way they do now, the monthly fee for coaching is usually around the $400 to $600 mark. That's how to deliver it at about a 30% profit margin. Now, there are ways to scale it up. And generally speaking, if you're going to scale your coaching, the one thing you need to do is ask yourself the question, what do you currently do one-to-one, face-to-face? What do you do specifically for individual clients that you can turn into something they can either do themselves or you can outsource to other people who are a less expensive resource than you to do? Or alternatively, you can record training videos and that kind of thing to help you do it. So for example, if you find yourself in your coaching program having the same conversation about the cash flow system and setting it up, record it as a video and send it to clients before you meet so that when you get together, you're having a conversation based on what they've already learned. Again, this is a heavy lifting thing. If you want to look at how this is done, check out the Khan Academy. It's an online education startup. It's probably past the startup now, but they for a whole bunch of reasons that I won't go here, they understood that the key to educating clients lies in giving them the information to learn and then working with them to unpack the bits they don't understand, how to implement it. In other words, focusing on applying it to them, not the concepts themselves. Another key is if you're going to do this, find a niche where it makes sense. You can charge a high fee if you've got lawyers earning a significant amount of money who can't save to save their lives. What's the name of? It's the Khan Academy, K-A-H-A-N, Elizabeth. You can charge for doctors, same deal. If they have got significant incomes and they're not saving anything, and what you can do for a doctor who's on $500K a year is help them save 20%, and that's $100,000 savings by putting in place a system, and you want to charge $600 a month, that makes total sense. But if you can't find a niche, some of the things you need to look at for scaling include pulling out some of your coaching and having it as fee-for-service sessions. Group coaching, getting people either online group coaching or perfect, Nobby, thank you. Creating a course to go with it. Selling digital workbooks that people can work through, which is a lot of, well, as you would know, we do a lot of that on the program. People will pay for this stuff. The reason they're willing to pay is by the time they get to you, there's a good chance they have been struggling with this for years and they're ready to make a change. They've realized that what is working right here and now isn't sustainable and won't allow them to live a life you can enjoy. And understand that if you charge $500 a month for a year and you get people sorted, that's not just about what it does this year. If you get it right, it's about what it does for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's compounding, but equally importantly, it's the impact it's going to have at a second level. So all I want to make this point is if you're going to do coaching, please take some time to understand all of the inputs, and I'm going to show you some numbers in a second, and price it correctly, and either find a niche for whom it makes sense to pay it, and you get confident about the impact and very good at explaining the value of what you do, or alternatively, look at what you're doing and constantly be asking this question, how can I remove the most expensive resource myself from this process? So I'll give you a couple of examples because I think it's super relevant. And there's, by the way, I'm just pull one out here because I think, you know what, if you go and check out some of those Financial Mentor and Be Awesome Not Broke, they will give you an idea of what the pricing is, Levanto. But as you can see, straight off the bat, Financial Mentor, I think, are probably one of the most information-rich sites out there. And they have tried everything from ebooks to coaching, personal to financial coaching, etc. And as you can see, straight off the bat, they've got personal coaching. They're 3 calls a month, private calls. Their first 2 to 3 months, $17.50 US. And then ongoing, 2 calls a month. Based on you having done the 1 call a month, $1,200. So you can see if these are businesses that have been doing it for a while, they specialize in it, this is their thing, and they understand not only the value of their stuff, but what they need to charge for it. Make sure you don't approach coaching as being a cheap entry to something else, because you do that and you make a mistake along the way, it's going to chew up a lot of time as well as make it frustrating. So do me a favor. Awesome, Nobby. Thank you for that, man. What's been most useful so far? Nothing is a perfectly valid answer, but is there anything in particular? I'd just love to know what in particular is resonating, if anything, out there before we dive into some of the how. What has been most useful for you personally? Something you could either something you feel like you can take and implement in your business, or alternatively, something which has kind of maybe made you realize something about coaching versus advising. Maybe it's something about your price point. Just give me an understanding. What's been useful from what we've spoken about so far? We've spoken about the coaching relationship. We've spoken about duration. We've spoken about mapping it out. Need a process, says Jared. Yeah. I need an outcome. Definitely need a goal. Clarifying the fundamentals to set the foundation, to set the pricing right. And Sabina, I think you have access to the pricing calculator, so you could have a crack at that. Process and systems matter for coaching and service. Yeah. As I said, even more so as an advice, if you don't have your system and your processes in coaching, you'll end up super, super busy and not that productive. Finding the niche that will value and pay for it. Ruben, I think that's a really, given what I know about your business, and we've done a value grid before where you have some clients who doing some cash flow coaching with them is more than worth the value. Useful, understanding it's an ongoing relationship. It's an ongoing relationship which is typically going to have a point in time where it potentially come to an end, and that's why it's important to paint the next picture. The coaching relationship is important. Obviously, you do have the system and the outcome. People actually want help. That's a really important point, Nobby. Like if you were to turn around and say, where is the focus right now? What do people want? Financial coaching is huge. The challenge is most businesses actually, I don't think there's a lot of specialist coaching businesses, and there's some businesses who dabble in coaching, and because they don't have certain systems and processes and the mindset right, they find that they just can't make money about it, and they drop back out of it. Okay, let's talk about the how. Thank you, by the way, for all the feedback on that. So I'm going to walk you through this kind of 6 steps to it. And as I said, if you want to note these down, you can have a look at the examples as well, but we'll dive in. So the first thing I think you really need to do is understand your market. This is either a niching thing. In other words, who can I work with who have financial challenges that I can help them with? Or alternatively, it could just as easily be looking at your existing client base or your existing email list and really understanding where the needs are. And if you don't know, as per usual, I would suggest getting on the blower to people you've got a strong relationship who you know will tell you the truth and ask these questions. But I've given you a bunch of ideas off the bat. First start with the problems, because problems are what gets people to go out and look for coaching. And your common problems that are coachable would be not saving any money, spending it all, obviously. No idea what we want and how to get it. That's the visioning piece. We want to do the best for our kids, but we're not getting anywhere. I can't get any lending for buying a home. Big one right now. Poor investment performance, paying fees all over the place. Don't understand money, estate affairs. You can see it on screen. And next is the desired outcomes. I will answer that question in a second, Glenn. Save 20% of income would be the outcome of saving. Really clear, tangible outcome. If there's no idea what to get, it would be complete clarity and a life plan for your family. If it's want to do the best for the kids but not getting anywhere, understand how to fund daycare and private school at the uni. I did a webinar a few weeks back with Steve Crawford, and he said the inquiries he gets from new parents who want to know, how does this daycare thing work? How do I pay for it? What about this government funding? What about, do I need to start putting away from uni? Again, this is a very, very clear problem. And if you can turn around and say, I am an expert in helping people understand how to make that transition to being a parent from a financial perspective. Not paying off the home. I'd love to double my rate of repayment. State affairs are a huge risk. Get my legacy in order. If I want to be able to invest more confidently, and the desired outcome is a totally professional investing framework, need to generate passive income, fast track to plan to replace 100% of wage income. Again, the more clearly you can understand the problems that people have, and more importantly, the problems that they say that have, not, you need to get your super sorted. And conversely, the outcomes they want to get that under control, the easier it's going to be for you to not only put your course together, put your coaching relationship, get a clear outcome and motivate them to do it, but equally importantly, to sell it. Glenn, your question was, how do you engage, get their interest in this stuff, get them motivated in such a service or part of an ongoing service? Mate, pretty much the same way you would with any other element, only this is much easier to market than advice. You can do content marketing, you can run webinars, you can run seminars, you can work with partners, particularly if you're working with other firms who don't have this capability, understand that it is a coaching program. You could put together a video program, put it on Udemy, get people engaged there. And again, with a focus on what's the next step of that. So, mate, no different from anything else. And the key thing about being able to market it is how well do you understand who you're trying to talk to, the problem they're Googling, and the outcome they want. The rest of it is very much the same. Step 2, Once you've got that, you really need an ethos. Now, Elizabeth mentioned that the workbook is 16 pages long, and it's 16 pages long because for a reason, which is there is a model, there is a module on the member site called the Model Advantage. And frankly, being able to sit in front of a client and explain to them that we have an ethos, a philosophy behind the way we work, that ability to put a model in front of them is often what is the difference between them seeing what you do as intangible and them understanding there is a system that sits in behind it. So the one that I've shown you, I think everybody ad nauseum, is the pyramid. But equally importantly, you can have a system that is based on the 4 ladders. Let's do that a little bit better. A lot of people use ladders to explain, there are 4 steps to getting your financial affairs in order. There is getting sorted, getting set for growth, there is reaping the rewards, and then there is living the dream. That's my 4-step process. Venn diagrams. We could talk about the 3 elements of getting your affairs sorted. I get the debt under control, get the cash flow working, and then get the investments pumping, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to sort of dive into this because I'm just seeing we're a bit short on time, but if you don't have a diagram that you can whiteboard or draw for the client, which explains to them the sequential order in which you work with people, or the key areas that you tend to look at and the benefit of getting sort of the sweet spot, then that's a place to start. Because with coaching, models absolutely rule. And if you want to see someone who's very, very good at this, check out some of Matt Church's work in this space. Cool. Nobby says most people want to get debt under control. The learning, the earning, and the yearning. Nice, sir. Learning, earning, yearning. Woo. Okay. Step 3 is I want you to define your engagement. And frankly, this is, I think, probably one of the simpler parts to do. You can add elements in there and define the bits and pieces, but ultimately most coaching engagements work a bit like this. The first step is to scope the problem. For those of you who use stuff on the program, this is just your plan scope session, your 9-step strategy session. Similar kind of approach. Ultimately, we're trying to work out what they want, where they are now, and the gap between the two, the things you need to work on. The second step could be an action plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be an SOA. It has to just be, okay, here are the things we're going to work on over a period of time. And I wanted to share this. This is kind of a model that I've been working on for a while. It's just an example of kind of modular advice. So it's basically the idea that, Nobby, to sort of, again, we're going through phases. Level 1 is solid foundation. Generally, if a client comes in and speaks to me between the age of 25 to 40, I would expect them to have good cash flow, to have their debt under control, to be managing their risks, and to have consolidated things in such a way that it is efficient. If at that point we can tick off their level 1, we'd move on to level 2, which is let's have a look at how to invest. Maybe use some gearing, not for everybody. Let's have a look at some advanced super strategies and maybe even start to retire for planning. This is something you'd expect to do with clients between about the age of 25 to 55. And this can be a longer term thing. Level 3, ready to reap. This is where you start talking about transitions. You start talking about potentially sophisticated investments if they've come that far, and potentially even looking at some family affairs. And then finally, if you nail that bit, you get to do the living the dream, which is the second wind, the legacy piece, and the philanthropy. Now, this could work very much in diagnosing client issues. If you come in and you've got a 55-year-old who doesn't have cash flow under control, doesn't have their debt, is all over the place when it comes to consolidation, you would say, you know what? From a coaching client, you're behind the 8 ball already. So we need to get your level 1 and we need to fast track it before we can even talk about level 2. And modularizing some of this sort of stuff is, again, how you can start to scale some of your elements to present clients with the idea that there are benchmarks and there are things they need to get done in the right order. Now, obviously be mindful of the fact that there are technical aspects to this. You definitely need to analyze things from the client's best interest and understand there is, you might need to do risk before you do cash flow, but you get the idea. Being able to modularize this stuff is a big part of you being able to sort of pull pieces out and scale a little bit better. The third part is an accountability program. I'll talk about that in a second. It's a way of keeping in contact. And the final bit after the accountability is reviewing progress, benchmarking, hugely important in coaching. And then finally, being able to give a next step. Is this useful? Cool. Hope so. Let's move on to step 4, which is the accountability plan. And really for me, I think the easiest way to do this is just kind of decide if you're going to coach people, what are the activities that you're going to do along the way? So for example, I might have a 12-month coaching program. And I think most coaching programs will be 3 to 12 months commitment, depending on what's there. some of your activities for this client might be, we need to set up the spending system. We need to then do a bit of personal visioning. We're going to have to check in on some of those spending habits. We'll have to do a bit of risk analysis, maybe do some short-term personal goal setting. In other words, what do we want to be celebrating 3 months from now? Small steps and big steps, checking in around those goals, and maybe a weigh-in at the end of it all. I tend to think, we break an engagement accountability program into the phone calls, the online meetings, and the face-to-face stuff. And then it's a case of kind of going through and saying, right, well, maybe month 1, it's the spending system. In month 2, then we've got some check-ins around habits. We'll start off with 40-minute online meetings. Then we'll come down to 15-minute calls. We probably need to do a bit of work on the short-term personal goals here. Get the idea? And then you can start to get an understanding as well, and this is where the pricing kicks in, of what the time invested, certainly face-to-face. So as you can see straight away, we can see there's a significant amount of work up front. 60 minutes, 40 minutes, 40 minutes plus, some stuff in the background. So straight away, your engagement over the course of 12 months is going to be around 7 hours, 40 minutes. If we times that by an average rate of $300 an hour, you can see straight away that you're up to about 2,100. What, 2,100? Yeah, no, sorry, 24, $2,500 for the year. And then we have a look at the back end. You can kind of see where, assuming it's 50% client facing and 50% in the background, the fee for your 12-month program really needs to start at $5,000 for you to be able to, to do this profitably and do this well. So again, the pricing becomes really, really important. And the final bit, yeah. Again, the next step. I cannot articulate how important it is as a coach to be able to demonstrate, represent the clients up front that what you do isn't just about sitting down with them doing stage 1. That there is a next step, there's a level 2, or there's an offer they can move on to where they actually can work with you in advisory. They can get you to recommend certain things. This is what will turn your standalone coaching into a great way of bringing on board clients who are invested. They understand how you work, they understand what you do, and they're willing to work with you long term. If you're just a coach, if that's what you want to do, and you want to do short-term programs, that's cool, but it's still worth having this in place. That's the one. Yeah, that's a great article. This or something like it, in order to represent, again, there's a system, there are stages. You don't ever want clients thinking that when they've been working with you for a year or 2 or whatever it is, that's it. Because you and I both know that it's more than that. It's about not just working with clients over a short space of time, but also working with them to make sure it gets fixed and stays fixed in the same way we have pilots to sort of pilot planes along the way. So that's what I wanted to cover off today. One final thing. Look, in terms of charging, you can do a number of different ways. There's a blog on our blog, which is all about 5 pricing sort of shapes. Month to month is very, very common. Set up a direct debit to get it going. Some people like to do what's called a front-loaded pricing. In other words, there's a bit of a higher fee in the first 2 to 3 months, and then it drops down, which enables you to make sure they're invested in the same way that gyms sometimes charge a sign-up fee in order to make sure that you're invested. But month to month seems to be the predominant way of charging. How you extract it tends to be mainly direct debit, seems to be the most common way. But that article from the guys, is it Phil Garrett? Phil Garrett? I think it's Phil Garrett, is a great article all about this sort of stuff. So I'd love to know, has this been useful? And if so, what do you think's been most useful? While you're putting Garrett Philbin, thank you. While I'm talking about that, we'll talk about software. Nobby, people should check out Nobby's website if they get a chance. I know he's got a lot of great resources on there about this. As for software, also check out Steve Crawford's, the webinar I did with Steve Crawford, which is on YouTube as well as the members site. There are a few different options that you can choose in terms of your cash flow coaching. My Prosperity, Money Brilliant. There is, what's the other one he recommends? There is Pocketbook, which I use, and he talks about the difference between auto allocation and auto suggestion. But look, at the end of the day, whilst the software is really important, it's actually the systems and the support in the backwards that get people to set them up and gets people to adopt the behavior. That's where you get the results. The software alone, unfortunately, doesn't, unless they're really committed, help people get the results. And which is one of the reasons why a lot of these tools end up partnering with professionals to make it work. So Ruben's insight was setting up systems and processes properly. Yeah. Coaching is very much about looking for the systems, process, repeatability. If you don't get that right, then it can really, really, really end up sucking up time. Particularly if you don't get the systems and process and the scalability of it right, and you also don't you don't get the pricing right as well. So, yeah, I'd love to know, what do you think was most useful from today, if possible? Pop it in the box and let me know. Love to hear from Jared in particular. James, love to know what works for you. Elizabeth, Glenn, ditto. Kelly, Nobby, please let me know. What was the most useful element for you out of today's presentation or today's webinar or live training, whatever we want to call it? What most floated your boat before I give you sort of some next steps? Perfect. James has a better idea of how coaching can be incorporated. And in your funnel, for me, coaching sits somewhere between your holistic advice offering and your sort of one-on-one expert session, 90-minute paid for. Many tips. Man, a few words, Jared, but that's awesome, man. Sabina, everything I know, everything, how to modulate, complementary software, how to scale, so you're not doing the work, make them committed. Love that. Kelly, keeping it as an ongoing program is possible. It is possible. You just have to recognize that keeping clients in within a financial coaching program is very much about constantly managing their state and their view of what the future and pacing what's to come. Nobby, finding my thinking is not out of step with expectations over the last 10 years. Good stuff. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. Let me give you a couple of steps. I reckon if you want to take this, because I hate webinars where nothing gets done. So I want to give you 3 options that you could do in order to turn this into results. And if you do, I'd love you to sort of shoot me back what you did with it and how it went, because the only thing I love more than feedback is feedback on how stuff's been implemented. If you'd like to take action in the next 48 hours, and I know from experience that if you do something with this within 48 hours, it builds momentum. I would suggest that great actions would be have a 15-minute coaching call with one of your existing clients and report back. Let me know. How did it go? What did you find out about the wins that client has had since they're working with? It doesn't have to be a coaching client. It could be a client you started work with recently, but a client with whom you know there is a clear financial goal in place. Or alternatively, write a blog about your ethos model. Take one of those models or create your own and then send it out to your client email list to let them know that there's a system in behind it. If you would like to make this a project, if you say, you know what, I'm going to go the whole hog and I'm going to turn it into something in my business. The steps I'd go through: high level, research or confirm that you have the market and the coachable issues they have. I think too many people get into implementation without researching. And I think a few conversations with clients, one-on-one, on the phone, is going to give you more information. Use great why questioning. Outline your practice ethos. Design at a high level your coaching program, the before, the after. Scope the accountability program. And hopefully pop it into a teamwork or a workflow thing so you don't have to kind of remember. Price it. You can use feemodeler.com.au if you want a pricing tool to help you. Find 2 to 3 clients to run a beta program or launch it with 2 to 3 clients, and then review it, refine it, repeat with more clients, systematize, and soon enough you'll have a coaching offer to be proud of. If you are one of those people who has big kahunas, you want to do big time, here's what you could do. And by the way, if you have big kahunas, let me know. And I mean that came out all wrong, but anyway, book a coaching call with one of those financial coaches. Jump on a call with the financial mentor guys. Reach out to Levanto, have a conversation with them. Reach out to Garrett Philbin and jump on a call with him. In other words, you know what? Sometimes sitting in front of people who do this already is one of the best ways of experiencing it. Too many people, I think, they go, I want to do something, and they go and try it themselves, and they finally realize it's not working, and then they go and ask for help. There's a bunch of people out there in our industry overseas who would happily sit down with you. It also gives you the opportunity of seeing what it's like from a client perspective, which I think is one of the most useful things. Or alternatively, if you've got really big kahunas, go out there today, sign up 5 clients to your new coaching program before you've even built it using just an email. And once you've got the signups, then sit down and go, great, now I've got 5 clients in my program, I better build the damn thing. A lot of people go out there and they launch everything and they create a website and they do all this work and then they launch. It's the wrong way around. Sign people up and then work out how you're going to do it for a whole bunch of reasons. Firstly, it lets you test with real live money whether there's demand for it. And secondly, when you know you've got clients coming on board, it has a special kind of motivation. So that was Teflon Financial Coaching, and I hope you enjoyed it. It was one of those training modules that I've created down the years, which was specifically in response to some challenges that my clients were going through at that particular time. I've done one on fact finding, I've done some on content marketing, all sorts of things. And to that end, I wanted to just put it out there. We are currently reaching the end of 2023 as I record this. And for me, starting the year is always the most important part of the work I do with practices that I get the opportunity to work with. To that end, our intake for 2024 program is currently open. And my goal is to bring on board 5 practices that I'm going to work with personally during that period. And we're going to start from the very beginning. Start by setting a 3 to 5 year strategic vision, creating a business plan, really analyzing those projects and embedding in your practice an implementation system, which we call the Racing Line. That is in addition to obviously the coaching I'll do during the year, access to all of the training modules that form part of our practice success portal at success.ourdairy.com.au, which you can join right now for free. And everything else that comes with being a part of our Practice Evolution program. If you are interested in working with me in 2024, and equally, if you're interested in understanding the ROI that I can generate for you and your practice, which, depending on what we work on, can sometimes be as many as 6 figures within the first 12 months with the right practice, with the right situation. There's various different ways we get there. Not everybody's thing is profit, by the way. Sometimes it's about capacity, which we've got plenty of ways of doing that as well. I can free up 10 hours in an advisor's week within 2 to 3 months quite easily. Sometimes it's about recruitment, growth, and resources. But if some of this is appealing to you, please head over to our website, ourdairy.com.au. Look for the Practice Evolution menu item, check it out. And if that is appealing to you, you can jump in there and book a bit of a discussion. Generally, the way that I start working with people is we will spend about an hour and 15 minutes to map out a potential plan for the year, which we call the plan scope session. And that is basically us understanding whether or not we want to work together. The precursor to that is we just jump on a quick call for 15 minutes. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about your business. You can ask me a bunch of questions about what I do. And if we agree that there's an opportunity there, we will progress to that session. Again, my goal is to get those 5 practices I'm going to work with in 2024 personally locked in by the time January comes along. So if you are interested, please head over to the website, book in your discussion, and let's get this done. In the meantime, look out for the next episode of The Finnovator, and I'll catch you soon.